Let me tell you what we're gonna do today. Today we're looking at this. Most of you know what this is. This is a TBS Unify Pro VTX, and it's been around for a while. It hasn't changed much, and the reason for it is because it's really freaking good. And apart from adding MMCX version recently and minor revisions, they're pretty much the same as they used to be. Now, I've tried many other VTXs. Hey, what's up, cat? I've tried many other VTXs, and honestly, I'm sticking with Unify's. I run them on almost all my quads, and the reason is they're just really good. They work well, they perform. When I take them to races, there's never complaints about them, blasting everybody else. They get tested at the races I go to. And when it comes to performance and freestyle and long range, this is what I use, and they've been good to me. I've had a couple duds here and there, but I've had many of them, so it's to be expected. Maybe one or two. This one right here is a race edition, but I also run the full 800 milliwatt version as well. Now today what we're gonna do is we're gonna prep one. Now I normally do not simply put them in the craft just like this, even though you could. I usually conformal coat every single one of them. They get shrunk again with new shrink tubing, and oftentimes I'll move the pigtail to a different position depending on where I'm going to mount it. I might also replace the pigtail with a right angle one if I need to, or if I'm running, let's say, a UFL axis antenna for lightweight, I'll do that too and replace it. And I'll use liquid tape to hold it in place. So all we gotta do is gonna take one of these brand new, we're going to prep it and put it in a quad, and I'll show you how I do it. Let's go ahead and get started. Here is a brand new TBS Unify HV. This is the full version with full 800 milliwatts. It's gonna go into this new Chameleon tie build. And on my old Chameleon, I had it mounted at the back. I'm pretty sure this one's going to go at the back as well because they're not too different. We have the anti-static packaging, an extra bit of shrink tubing for people like me that are going to do what I'm going to do in this video. Double-sided tape, which is heat transferring, so it allows heat to transfer through this thing, which gets very hot, into the carbon. And then the wire harness, which, by the way, it's good to have a couple extra of these. So like Pyro sells them, a couple of people sell them, so they're like $2 a piece or something. So just buy a couple of these because sometimes you want to move VTX from quad to quad, or you screw up, change something, decide you don't want to do it this way or the other. It's good to have a couple harnesses. Not only that, but the ground is actually split in one place. So basically one of the pins has two ground wires, one going to the power, one going to the camera. So it's a little bit harder to do unless you have the right crimpers and the right terminals to do one of those. So it's good to have a couple extra of these just for peace of mind. Saves you time when you're building and find out you screw up. What we're going to determine here is where we're going to put it. No matter what, I'm going to open this thing, because say that I like the pigtail where it is, I could just mount it and let it be. But since I am conformal coating everything on this quad as I usually do, I'm not going to let this one not be conformal coated because I just don't want to have to think about it. I want to know everything is conformal coated. So no matter what, we're cutting this open. But before we do that, I'm going to start thinking of how I'm going to mount it. So to see if I need to either change this pigtail for a 90-degree one, or move it around, maybe coming out this end. I sometimes put it so it comes out under here instead of out that way, depending on if I need to make it shorter. The only difference between this Chameleon and the regular one is that I'm not using the stock plate to mount the antenna. This is a TPU printed one by BMC 3D, which offers a right angle pigtails for the for your receiver antenna, and then The actual VTX antenna comes out at an angle through here with the antenna kind of pointing like that. Now, I'm going to run Crossfire on this guy, but I'm not using an Immortal T. I'm just going to run the two the dipole with the extra ground antenna coming out the side. So one is coming out this way and the other one's coming out that way. I find I get enough range with that. I've gotten very far with it. Who knows if the Immortal T is better? I have it on some quads, but on this guy I just don't want to put it under an arm or anything like that. So since I only have to run the RX here and the VTX over here, there really is no reason why I shouldn't put it back here. Now, the way we're gonna put it, let's see. Could do this, though it's wasting a lot of real estate, and you gotta think about a couple of things. If you look here, if I put it like this, I would have to move it forward quite a bit. Let's see if I can move it forward. Okay, like there. And the reason for that is because if I hit something, yeah, you can already tell. Like look at this. You gotta think about these things. If this antenna hits anything and moves that TPU mount, the end of the antenna down here is gonna hit some of the components, including that plug on the VTX, which is gonna be hot, and guess what's gonna happen? It's gonna break it. So no bueno. So let's go ahead and try something else. So before I fully commit to this position for the VTX, I'm going to run another test. Now remember, I said I was going to use this wire, and that's all good and well, but I could also, this is long enough really, but barely. Like if I put that in there and then feed the wire over and stick it over here, it's super tight. Like any flex is gonna yank some of these wires, and that's not gonna be good. Yeah, I'll probably run it under the ESC wires, so that'll help me with clearance and making it clean as well. And technically, see that's enough. It's good. I can actually do that. But before I fully commit, I'm gonna actually cut it open and start messing with the placement of the UFL, because it's likely going to come out this end, and if I do it the other way it's going to be similar. So what we're going to do is, so I don't have to take this off because I'm going to need it there anyway, I'm actually going to just cut, if I find my snips here, cut around this. I'm just cutting around the shrink tubing so that I can easily pry off the UFL. I could use these as well. There you go. Okay, and there you go. So it's off. Okay, so I've changed my mind 10 times, but I finally decided this is the way I'm going to do it. There's several reasons why. This way will allow me different ways of wiring it. I was going to use the pigtail that comes with it and modify it to work with this board, but I'm gonna have a little bit of trouble with this one, and I don't like to splice wires if I can avoid it, so I'm not gonna splice. I'm just gonna do it. I know this board works well when you power the VTX from the Tempest F4 and the camera from the bottom plug on the board. That's usually not the way I do it with the Unifys. Yeah, that's important to mention. If in doubt, run it like this. A Unify Pro HV, you power from these wires, and then you power the camera from the VTX. I know that on this board it works, so I'm gonna go with it. And the camera is gonna be powered from the regulator on the board itself, and because I know that works. So that's how it's gonna go. So now that I know that, I'm gonna get my phone gonna take a picture of how I'm gonna set it up so that I don't forget as I'm working on it. The cleaner, the better it'll be, but it's not crucial because the glue that you put on this doesn't do a whole lot, to be honest. If you pull on it, it's gonna come off. That's why some people don't like UFLs. They prefer MMCX because in a lot of situations it is superior. But I have a lot of these UFL connectors and I'm pretty happy with them. It's no big deal. Okay, that's clean enough. Now we know that this goes like that. And then this goes here, so I know this is going to come out this end. Okay. But I'm going to move it out of the way so I can work. So now what we're going to do is waterproof it. Beautiful. Alright. That's it. So the important thing when you do this is don't get any close to the UFL because you might end up, you know, making the contact not work anymore or losing contact. So you're just going to dab it on, spread it. Don't put too much. Some people just go crazy thinking you need a lot of it, but in reality the instructions themselves say all you gotta do is a little bit, one coat. You don't even have to do more than one, it's enough. The newer it is, the fresher this stuff is, the more it's gonna run. So keep that in mind. Make sure to not put any on the switch, on the button, because otherwise you will lose the ability to change settings. So you can go around it, but make sure not to put too much or it'll seep under it and it'll ruin your day. Okay. So we'll do this side first. If these guys stop opening and closing the door, it'll be a lot easier. There you go. So there you go. So now we let this side dry for a bit. We'll turn it around and do the other side. So we'll come back in about 15 minutes to do the other side. Okay, so now that that side is done, we are going to turn it over and do the other side. Okay, that's it. Now we just let it dry. Alright, if you're in a bit of a hurry, which I usually am, what you can do is you give it a little bit of heat, the same heat gun you use like to shrink tubing, and not to burn it, just enough so it starts baking it on. Okay, so now we're just gonna let it sit a little bit longer, and when we come back we're going to set the you know what, let's just do it right now so it dries. We're gonna go ahead and set the position of the UFL because it is dry to touch. So just to check the photo, so I remember how it goes.
Now this one's a little easier because it's not bent.
There it is. So I always put a little bit on top so there's more pressure, the downwards pressure when I put the shrink tubing on. But that's basically what we're gonna do now. We're gonna let it dry and we're gonna come in shrink tubing, shrink wrap it again and put it on the quad. Well, yeah, and put it on the quad. Now that it's conformally coated and ready to go, at this point, if you are going to have the pigtail coming out the back like this, if I can get it to focus, then you can just slip on the shrink tubing, shrink it, and call it a day. Also, if it's coming out this end, the same thing. You don't have to do much else. But because it's, for me, it's going to be coming out the side, I actually gonna do a little bit of a hack where I'm going to divide the shrink tubing a little bit and overlap it in order to do what I need to do, because I need it to come out through here. So I'm gonna measure it there and then I'm gonna cut it right around here. Okay, now it's gonna be done in 2 parts. Want to be careful not to lift the pigtail too much, because you might get the UFL undone, and that would be bad. Alright, so that's pretty good right there. So the first thing we're gonna do is shrink this bit. Okay, so as you can see, I did only half of it, because now I'm going to use half of another one to go over. For the second one, this is not going to be long enough, so I'm going to use some of my own. And I like to use shrink tubing that's a little smaller than I need it and stretch it out, so it shrinks tighter. So we're gonna go like that much, more or less. Okay. And I'll take some needle nose pliers, or bigger needle nose pliers, and I'm gonna stretch it out so that it's no longer a 2-to-1 ratio. It's more like 3-to-1 or 4-to-1, based on the starting size, the size before we shrink it. Okay, so now we're gonna put it over and see what I'm trying to do. The idea is that it'll overlap so that the wire can come out that side. So let's shrink it. A good idea is to get the pigtail more or less where you want it already, because when it gets warm you can of course shape it into place a lot more easily. So in order to not leave fingerprints on it, it's hot anyway, I'm going to go ahead and use this to hold it down and force it into place. So basically now I'm shaping it as to how it's gonna sit on the quad, and let it cool for a bit, and it'll help me not to have to yank or pull on it or try to shape it. As you can see, the wire comes out the side. There you go. And straight out the back where it's gonna go on the quad. So we already know it's gonna go on this bit and back here like that. And that is how you prep a TBS Unify. Now it's waterproof and ready to go. This is how I do all of them. Not necessarily that same exit for the pigtail, but either this way, or that way. The point is that the actual prep process is more or less the same.